like a book or something to read. These are my notes, and I made one of the scribbled stuff, you know.
What do you need, a pad or something?
Yeah, something, a book, a clipboard.
You can hear? Okay, so we're good for sound. You can hear their discussion over there.
We have a clipboard.
I'll go over here.
A clipboard. Okay, that's old fashioned, I know.
I made one in the closet for the science thing.
Okay, let's see, I've never used that. I just need something, you know, I
Yeah.
know if I want to write questions.
Right, exactly.
I'm not gonna remember.
Maybe it was that other site, I mean,
Yeah.
whatever, when you went back to the real one.
You know, I keep trying to catch up with that, I remember where. Oh, yeah, it's
There we go.
Oh,
You saved it for the science.
oh, that's perfect. Thank you. All right, this I know. I can't get it else, I have it. Exactly. I thought, well, we should read it, it's in study, does everyone know? I was in Spain. In Argentina or something. That's right. And I made this here.
Outrageous sound.
I think I'll do that. Well, it's 50 seconds. But, yeah. That red? That red. Red. Oh.
Hello. Concerning this. So you want to do a sound check again?
I hear you. It's like an echo.
Right.
You say something and then a minute later I hear it again.
How about now? Is this good? This is great.
It's fine.
Okay, great. So we,
How about me? I don't have quite the bravado that Kim has. Can you hear me? Normal
I
voice?
hear
Normal?
you. Fine, yeah.
What about me? Actually, I can project pretty far if I really think about it, because
use your stage training.
well, if you teach, you have to do that. Yeah. It's a kind of stage, isn't it?
It is. I was on stage for 37 years.
You were?
And teaching
Yeah, where?
at Horace Mann School in
I
Toronto.
know exactly where I was. And I didn't think of it. Oh, that's right, it's up in Riverdale.
Well, when it was founded, it was Columbia University, so
Yeah.
the building still says Horace Mann on the side.
I have a cousin who went there, and I have a former student from Penn who went there, because it became co-ed. It was all men at
Yeah,
that time.
what was her name?
Rachel, at that time, she was Weinstein. Rachel Weinstein, she lived in Queens, almost Long Island, and she made that commute every day.
I can't really hear her, the machine's not.
Oh.
How about now? Try Barbara now.
Okay, so she actually changed her name, not through marriage, but because she felt she was a different name. but she was an art student.
It's good.
It's good.
It works. When it's facing you, it works.
Okay, so that, you have to know that, it has to
Yeah.
face the speaker.
So you prefer to sit on the side, not the center?
Yeah, because then I can see everybody.
Thank you.
Otherwise I have to do that all the time, and I'd rather have the full
You
view.
will be indicating a negative reaction.
That's right.
No.
No.
That's
no.
wrong.
No, I think it's better if I see everybody, at once. I do
Okay.
know, well, I don't know Jenny very well, but I could see.
Interesting to see that all four studied at the studio. And I kind of realized that.
Owen, I didn't know Owen did.
He came to study with Leland Bell and Victoria. They can teach there that well. In 1975.
I know Jenny did.
And Janet is a founding student. And Richard too.
He wasn't a founding.
Oh.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
I like that.
Sorry, right.
Did you study in Janet?
I was a young yeah.
But when I actually, my father was yeah. He came from graduate school while I was there.
Yeah.
I didn't get.
So you went there as graduate work?
I was at MT, and I got in, and luckily they gave me my credits anyway. And, what was the question?
What about MFAs?
Oh, yeah, so I had to go in Harvard College when I got to it.
Okay. Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
So I went to Cooper, and I
That's right.
got it right here. And I did not take the road. I was so afraid that if I did that, I would do it. I was afraid they would let me back in. A year off, or did anything. Because it was serious. And that's what I had no choice. I had to be afraid of last night.
I brought cider just in case.
Hard cider.
No, just regular cider from the farmer's market.
We got water. So you're up there, so you can choose your poison seat, whatever.
And Cooper.
Okay.
Not
Not charging.
I ran into someone 10 years ago who was a couple of years behind me. Oh, yeah.
Just doing
Yeah, I
audio
knew,
or
I was
video
2 years
also?
behind you.
Pardon me?
I just doing audio or video also?
No, it's a live stream video. That's why we got it.
So what are you using for the camera? The iPhone?
The camera is the computer. So YouTube allows you to have a free live stream if you use the computer camera. Which I guess is a way to spy on you.
That was good.
It
That
has-
job was all that was required.
But if you pay for an account, which we did, you can use an external camera. And the problem with this is I don't have a Zoom lens, I can't Zoom, but it's a laptop, so I can move it.
Yeah. I like it better when it's open, all that. Yes. No,
And
that's
after I
not
graduated, I had a lot of control. I'm walking up and down the Seventh Avenue, and I wasn't doing it.
That was that very meaning, exactly.
Stay with the George. We had already married. And and he didn't get to see that. He didn't realize it was in the last 50 years. We had no way of knowing that, because he wasn't living it by then anyway. But it was so interesting. Nobody thought this would have any traction at all. And it just, God's realized. You might have to close it window, I hear everything, I have to hear.
upstairs.
Yeah, no, they're all right, no, in the hall, they're on the street.
You need to do that.
Yeah, no, well, can you hear that? That's all right there. But I think, you know, I moved from a house in the middle of nowhere to a loft. And this guy below me who plays music. And music that let me concentrate. Well, why don't you play yours? I don't play music most of the time. Occasionally I listen to it, but quiet, very quiet. And I can hear the music on my phone. Well, I can't stop it from doing that.
Did you do anything about,
Apparently this is sensitive, but nevertheless, I just say, make it low, wear your earbuds, but no. He said, what if you had a musician in here? I said, musician? Don't play the music, that anyone can hear, only they can hear it. They have 2,000 lights. I mean, those are the buildings out. He's not going around playing music out loud. He said, just the music. So when I say I hear everything, so unfortunately,
I just look at it,
yeah, I'm just saying,
I can hear it.
and I'm not sure I'm sorry.
Right.
I hear that.
No longer
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see this, the ones from the. They'll log in and
I know you do.
it's here.
I mean, I was somewhere in the
Yeah, you should.
and I didn't work here and there.
I will wait, so
Probably didn't want to.
I'll do
I
that.
think I'm gonna
The,
break one of these open. Yeah. This is perfect, small.
That's what I mean.
So Jerry checked us on the chemical.
Yeah.
I thought I'd see something older
I
first.
tried to talk her into that.
What?
I tried to talk her into an older picture. No one wants to show their old stuff.
So there's a book.
But I thought that was important to show that.
So,
These
I don't know, I think
library
Didn't get it to me on time.
there's almost 40 years there.
Somebody
It is.
done.
What's the first
name? But they're all like.
Yeah.
So once they finally get it,
I will go back on that one. Or I can look at it.
I mean, when I hear it, I get
I
like,
can't get over there.
so I'm not.
The catalog,
There we are.
Oh, that's so fun. I want to see the, what's her name's writings, because they sold out, you know, at Morgan. And whatever her name was.
Oh, yes, Mesopotamian, yes, yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
They were sold out, Amazon had sold that, so I ordered one. I want to see what she said.
Actually, I know people who, I know actually two people who are city officers. And I told one of them, not here, and I said, the morning is stuff, and this is remarkable. It was really a remarkable show. I also thought the way they did it. Everything was nice.
I heard someone say they had he was able to see everything around.
Oh,
And other reasons, this wasn't mostly up against the wall.
no, that's beautiful. I mean, they did a good job anyway. Oh, I didn't know that. See, I don't do that.
Well, I knew they had really good ones. So I had to do that, and I know they had long hair.
Oh, that's great, I'm sure, is it still up there? I wanted to show you now.
Yeah, I went through, right.
Okay. But then it'll be on. Sure, but I mean, we'll do it.
Now, did you see while you were there, Ryan show upstairs?
Well, actually, Ryan,
Right.
I guess he talked in my place.
Right.
He was a, he did.
Yeah, and it's stressed.
And
Fifty seconds.
Elizabeth?
And he was.
Elizabeth? ACT,
Oh, what he did for children, for same way, the text was by Rice.
Yes, I do. It says welcome.
And there's a whole upstairs.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing.
Oh, they want to do a presentation and afterwards.
Well, they're amazing. The one was lying,
So that'll be.
Oh,
Very attractive.
Yeah.
I can track.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we have a friend who did this earthquake.
That's the question here, we'll review the book, we'll speak about it
And here.
in the first half. No, let's see that, I'll get it.
She's not from that region.
No, she's from Cyprus.
Shows your tie.
Oh, I'm sure, yes.
Yeah, I have a friend in
I went by myself, I went to Istanbul, and then my friend from Beirut met me. He's a painter. And so. That was great. And we had this common person, never in discussion about money. I just went to Philadelphia with her. I don't know you, then I don't. And this really is just. And it's opened my life. We really need that. I mean, it wasn't like she was a shrimp. She couldn't do that. Anyway, it's interested in the same thing. So you bring in this kind of little like, and I found something we'd never seen. I found the most small, hidden behind the Egyptian bazaar. But I found this place. So we went from Istanbul and we drove all the way down the coast and inland with the way to Izmir and down to and but we stayed in all these crazy places. It was
Elizabeth, so our address is Blue Mountain Gallery at Verizon.net.
No, a little tiny one with beautiful, mosaics.
Oh, there, that was closed. That was the one place that was closed. I think that was.
Hey, Richard.
I did go to Cappadocia. Cappadocia, you have to fly there.
That was only in Istanbul, and this was in 59.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, people kept saying to me, say, did you notice that in Istanbul, it's all up and down? I mean, there's a place except by the river, by the hospital. It is all the hills, nobody was back.
Is this where the candles is?
Yes. So Barbara's there.
Hey,
And then,
why did you sit?
Wait, wait.
Anyway, yeah, that was my, I mean, I wasn't by myself. I was by myself in Istanbul and Cappadocia.
Spot, I don't know where that is.
There's a place you paid me.
out of towners came. No, you came just in time, not to help. But if you want to show your chairs at the end.
That's far. And you're welcome.
It was in '86. And then we went to Patmos.
I don't know if she had any orders she wanted to do.
Some of It's a big island. It's 3/4 of church, so we can go to X. You can go, you can go ferry from Salmons to
Great is
X.
amazing.
And then you go and you land, you take a bus, and you have to have your passport, so go to. Pretty interesting. Ephesus is very big, built early. Oh, it's all the way to the other side of the
December, I don't know the exact date. It doesn't come up, it doesn't come up without the passengers. Yeah, but they get reminded. All right. But I remember it was. How would you do it? I thought I'd see something into, all into, not that much, but I have plans for only have a size.
I do too.
They have
I don't have
documentation.
very
What they do. I know that's good.
And
Some people, it's like 30 years.
most of the wash 20-something.
We don't know.
And on the road buses. I'd be willing to, I prefer to do it with someone. And his wife and they had,
Right.
Should I just start talking like this?
That's nice that they didn't have.
Here? Here? Here?
Just sit in the chair and talk.
Okay, can you hear me talk about anything you want to do?
It's a delay. That's what the sound like. We're using YouTube.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Look towards the computer.
Here? Oh. Can you hear me now? Oh, that's good. I'm glad. I really don't want to look at this, but
Janet, did you also say something to the computer?
Can I say something? Is that what you said? Yeah. To the computer, hello, computer. All right, let me see, is this a good place to sit, or we can have a time seat?
I'm just sitting at the end because I want to see everybody.
I'll sit. Well,
You can sit wherever you want.
Janet, you're gonna need to project a bit more, a little more volume.
Okay, more volume, that good? I think
Yeah,
that's-
so Jenny can sit here.
okay, I'll sit here.
Jenny can sit
Yes,
here.
Janet, that's good volume.
Okay,
Set it
good.
up, number setting right there is good.
I'm not gonna see.
Your voice box.
We have a sign, water box, there we go.
Well, I've already had some water.
There's more waters too.
Yeah, why did you bring one or two extras? Just in
Maybe I
case.
should sit there. I look too big.
That's
You
why I
look
didn't
too
sit
small.
there. That's why I didn't know, I'm not gonna check.
You not gonna switch?
No.
You wanna look
Move
big?
over a little because otherwise we're not going to be seen by.
Oh, I see.
Oh, when you want to sit squish it forward?
Bigger screen.
Huh?
Bigger screen.
That looks too big.
You don't want you running to the bathroom in the middle though.
Well, my bladder.
Thank you.
Okay. It's a full service operation.
This way.
See, this way I can respond. If I'm in the middle, my head is swiveling. Not allowed to look at the phone during the talk.
Okay.
Oh, no, it's good. Coming from- Yeah.
It's very loud.
There's
Those
a lot-
people are real
lot of
loud.
people. Yeah.
What are they being loud at? That's what I would.
There's a young kid.
Yeah.
And a child, you know, jumping up and down.
They're jumping up and down in the street.
They'll be there that long on the side.
Well, they've been there a good 20 minutes already.
Okay.
They may be there for as long as it's not too cold.
Maybe they should be moved back a little.
Well, we want that for sound.
Oh, the sound's going to the.
Yeah, so when you speak, you need to project towards the computer. If you look away, they have their hearing aids.
Okay. I'm gonna look out the window and see what they're doing.
That has got to stop.
I think it's a birthday party.
But I can't deal with it because I can hear
It's
everything.
funny, when I put my phone here, I can hear, but I put my phone here, it's like, wow, it's like 3 times
I
better
think just
than the
before
other.
we can get here.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I'm the same thing. My left is better.
I had vertigo in 2016. It came.
I don't think it's, is it affecting the sound?
You have to hold
Can't-
on to something. It's turning and
Oh,
turning and turning.
okay.
It's gonna be terrifying.
Yeah.
They're loading up a car, so maybe
I'm just gonna move this. No, okay.
I can move here.
Barbara?
You can sit
Musical
here.
You said there would be another question coming.
Yeah, there are many questions. I'm not gonna tell you now. You'll overthink things.
You want to sit here, and I'll look at this one, and Jenny can sit in that one.
Yeah, that makes
Like,
sense.
you know, like nobody wants to be a big chair.
So it appears that a group of people next to a car, they appear like they might be taking the car and going somewhere. So hopefully that's what will happen.
Is that Cliff?
Yeah.
Hello, I have something for you.
Nobody anything knows. All right.
Then what are you?
Motion of notes. Oh.
Oh, yes.
So you don't ask us this.
Never actually.
And they're okay. I never passed it on. I got all that from
Make notes.
I did too. Yeah.
Just one of those things.
Oh, I'm gonna actually.
So I don't forget something.
That way everyone will be here.
Actually,
It's not gonna be that.
I got it.
Just in case.
Sure. Okay, so this is,
So these are the keys to.
These are the two keys, is the keys to the gallery.
oh, okay.
To open the elevator.
What was that about,
I'll
Jim?
figure it out.
What was that about?
I think the chairs are leaning on things. Yeah, okay, whatever. A couple of clunkers in the barrel. Somebody want to? I'm just thinking of you. Okay, it's up. We've got 5 minutes, everybody. I'm going to start with Marcia giving an introduction to Barbara. Then I'll go to Barbara.
Give it about like 2 minutes after 3, you know.
Okay.
Is it 5 of 3? Yeah.
5 of 3 now.
So we'll wait. Well, Jenny just walked in. So we need a minute.
It's a lot like Play-Doh, yeah. Oh, sorry, dashing to get my kids to basketball, so we went a little
You didn't
earlier.
tie it to the radiator or anything like that, wrap them up.
So, folks, when you're speaking, speak towards the computer and project.
That's yours.
If you turn away, the sound goes not as loud.
So if I'm speaking, I'll speak there, even though I may be speaking to an individual. Okay.
Oh, that's what you're saying, I shouldn't answer this way, I should answer that way?
Yeah, apparently
Yeah,
that's
you
what
talk-
we.
That's
to
a
the
weird
computer.
feeling, I don't know if I wanna,
Well, you might start by looking and then turning. That way you get.
Well, you know, you could look at Barbara, that's looking at the computer.
Well, if you look at the computer, you look at everyone, right?
It's like sports commentators, you look at each other and then you talk to the audience.
Yeah, that's what I was suggesting, yes. Just acknowledge the person.
No, I'm not saying to look at her in person, I mean, look at her.
you have notes.
You could,
Well,
you both.
then you don't feel like you're talking to a computer.
Well, you've got millions of audience members out there. In
I
television
want to thank the
land.
computer.
And you got
I get it. Who hung this show?
Yeah. Actually, I could look at it myself.
We're so colorful.
Yeah, we're so colorful.
Everybody's either is black or
Jeans, but I decided not to.
Yeah, for free afternoon,
dark
huh?
green. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, but the kids, that's probably their hair.
We just have to go to a different country to see what color.
Right.
Well, we're down to where.
Next
I
year.
would just go all over the shop. I would have
Where is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Your phone will have a change of service.
She was at work with the mayor of Israel, and I was freaking out.
There was a woman
Yeah.
out there when I went to see her.
Who was in the one that I think it should be.
Thin strap. No.
Oh, too. Then I have that show coming up, so I'm kind of scrounging to finish up some pieces.
Where's your show?
It's April 25th,
Oh, right after Elizabeth.
right after Elizabeth, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
In September.
I'm way behind, I know, way too soon, you
I'm
know.
not behind, I have enough for this show.
I love your part.
Be nice to
I'm
have better.
trying to finish 10 of those weird reliefs, because I started them this summer, but they're a little slower than I intended, so. And they're gonna be very spread, I'm a little nervous, it'll be a very spread out show, it'll be like parrot, you know, lots of space, very elegantly hung.
The soundtrack to go with it. You have a soundtrack.
I should play jungle sounds.
Right.
Good idea. Thank you. And thank you so much for coming.
What do you think about the door?
Oh, I think we should probably close it.
Or put a sign saying enter quietly or something?
That's a great idea, right?
Enter laughing.
Right.
It's gonna be recorded too, so after the live stream is over, and then
Now,
they can stay on YouTube.
what's the story on the Q&A? Who's reading the questions?
So I could read the questions, and also Elizabeth can read the questions.
You're so kind to be helpful.
Are we supposed to rate?
Or-
You talk
The
about,
camera's on the computer.
No, you can raise your hand because you're here.
they still Florida.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so it's half a minute after for me, we'll wait a minute and a half more.
Yes, please.
Then I'll swivel over.
He got it. He sold it.
Wow, it sounds like a huge party going on.
It's in the street. Oh, there's an opening down.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll close the door.
yours.
Yes, I can put it to the edge so I know it's mine.
Yeah, I have mine over here. Mine is stored.
Are they putting the sun in the door?
Breathe.
Why are they?
Breathing.
Good idea.
Almost.
That's better. Oh, I see. All of a sudden, it just gets fast.
I'm going to sit. So I just want to welcome everybody, and I'm going to sit down. For those of you that are watching online, I hope,
Louder.
okay. I hope you have the opportunity to come in and see the show, which will be up until February 25 or through February 25. And after that, will be an exhibition by Cliff Thompson called
Painting store.
Painting Story. And so please come and see that. We are located at 547 West 27th Street, which is between 10th and 11th Avenues. And we're on the second floor, right across from the elevator, Suite 200. The panel discussion is being recorded, and it will also be on YouTube afterwards. And the discussion will be about an hour long, and then there will be time for comments and questions. And for those who are watching online, you've got two different methods that you can use for responding. And one of them is, if you have a Google account, you can sign in and enter your questions in the chat. And Kim Doe, who is our technician, will see those. Kim is also a member of Blue Mountain, and he is in this show, and his landscapes are facing the window on the other side of that panel. Anyway, the second way of doing this is to email your questions, in which case either Elizabeth Bisping, who's sitting at the desk, or I, who am the director of Blue Mountain Gallery. My name is Marcia Clark, for those of you who didn't know that. And the gallery is an artist-run gallery, so I'm also one of the artists in the show. So anyway, our email address is bluemountaingallery@verizon.net. And we look forward to your questions. So to introduce the panel, we are delighted to have Barbara Grossman as our moderator. And Barbara is a graduate from Cooper Union, and she is a Fulbright scholar, and she has been a national academician, that is a member of the National Academy since 1994. And she has been painting and teaching all of her adult life, I believe. And she was a founding member of Bowery Gallery, and we have representatives here today. And since beginning of Blue Mountain, we have been kind of sister galleries. So Barbara had showed for many years at Bowery and is now showing at a number of different galleries and universities. And her teaching has included at Yale University, at the University of Pennsylvania, at Chautauqua, and the New York Studio School, which I've learned everyone on the panel has had a relationship with.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either, very interesting. So Richard Castellana, whose paintings, his still lifes are over here, has been painting and exhibiting at least since the early 1970s. And 60s, okay.
Mid-60s.
Okay, and let's see, what did I want to say? That besides still lifes, you paint landscapes and figure compositions, and you work from observation and memory and your imagination. It's interesting. So you have been traveling to Italy in recent years, where you've had artist residencies. And I believe you're in collections both in the United States and in Europe. And there is a magazine that you have, that there is a nice review of your work in, which is a bilingual magazine that is published in Rome. So I hope you have a copy of this at the gallery. I haven't seen it yet. So, and next we have Owen Gray. And Owen came to New York City in 1975 to study with Leland Bell and Nick Caroni, who were teaching at the studio school at that time. And you've received a Pollock Krasner Award, very nice, and you have had a number of reviews recognizing your work. And there's a memorable one from the New York Times by Ken Johnson. Probably other memorable ones too, but that's the one I remember. And Janet Sawyer was actually a founding student of, and her work is over here, the black and white paintings. And okay, so she was a founding member of a student at the studio school, and she also studied, her undergraduate work was at SUNY Stony Brook, and she has an MFA degree from Brooklyn College. And she has shown internationally, New York City, Paris, Berlin, Rome, and has works in various collections, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Very nice. And Jenny Toth, whose work is over here. By the way, those online, if you want to check our website, you will be able to see all this work up close. Anyway, Jenny works with she's a painter and she's a mixed media artist, as you can see. And she works very often, or usually, with animal subjects and imaginative self-portraiture
And she received her MFA from Yale School of Art. Probably before you began teaching there.
Yes.
1998, was it?
Yeah.
And you've been showing your work and what do I want to say here? You're an associate professor at Wagner College, which is in Staten Island. And I hear that you are passionate about octopuses and whales and
Yes.
birds and donkeys and elephants.
Yes.
And they figure in your work.
Yeah.
So let us begin.
Okay, well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Everybody here is very accomplished, but there is a long view. I tend to call it the long haul because it ain't easy. It's been hard for many of us, up and down, in and out, and it's kind of interesting to figure out what that trajectory has wrought. How do artists mine themselves? How do they evolve? And I'm just going to read this because it's clear. I think there are probably several ways to examine the way an artist works over the long haul. How they might change radically through a change in point of view or through a variety of materials or perhaps an incident in their lives. It's dramatic. That can be observed in a number of examples in this exhibition, in fact. But there are also artists whose growth is not immediately discernible. The subject matter stays the same. The material doesn't change very much. But the mining of that subject and idea is steady and focused and a chosen direction. And I think part of my choices in our panel here is because there is this variety of the long view within each person. And I feel that I'd like to start by you telling us what your thoughts are about how you have come to where you are. Has it been the deep mine? Has it been the shifting? This is a totally, unjudged, because we are who we are. So I'm curious to get this started to find out how that evolved in you, the artist. Maybe Jenny, you could start if you don't mind.
Sure.
Excuse me.
So that's a complicated question with many facets. I would say I imagine it's, as you said, very individual for a different journey for everybody. For me, I grew up with a mother who was a published memoirist who wrote about growing up in a small town in Iowa and published her first book when I was in 4th grade. And I watched her, as she wrote more stories, really delving into her own, the small details of her own life. And I think that influenced me as I became a painter. I was very interested in working from life and depicting what was around me and also what sort of my inner life was. So kind of finding a balance between finding the surprises as a painter works from life finds when you really study something, and also thinking about some of the emotions and feelings that I was trying to depict through that. And I have found that I've stayed very consistent in wanting to paint and work from life primarily. So I don't work well out of my imagination. If I were to sit down and try to play Pictionary, I would lose to everybody in this room, no doubt. But I also have struggled with, as a painter from life, that I also wanted to paint things that maybe weren't still lifes or landscapes, that I wanted to find a way to create imagery that was a little bit different. So I tend to make sort of elaborate setups and have worked hard with mirrors and myself as a model, trying to create scenes that I found very engaging visually, but also, again, expressed something of whatever kind of feelings I was having in my life. And so more recently, I had children very late, and I, at my last show, I put together, my son made a lot of drawings, and I put together some dioramas with his drawings and then painted from life those, so that it enabled me to make really imaginary scenes, inspired by something very important to me in my life, my son, but also I was able to branch out of things that I normally might work from in my studio. And finally, I have a very deep passion, as Marcia alluded to, with animals. And so I have felt a connection with animals my whole life. I think I was relatively lonely as an only child growing up with a single parent, and I sought comfort with animals and really have felt connected to them. So I have made some trips where I went to Thailand to an elephant sanctuary and painted elephants, and most recently I've been studying birds. So let me know if I'm going on too long, but after my last show, we were in Mexico for the summer, and there was a parrot who was at a restaurant, and he was a very lonely parrot and very chatty, and they named him El Chapo, which is really an unfortunate name. But I started to draw him, and I became very attached to him, and he would start to recognize my voice when I passed by and would start screaming, so I would come. So from him, I then started making I'm like, well, I can't take Chapo home. That's illegal to transport an endangered animal across the border, but I could make a large paper mache Chapo. And then maybe I could make like a zoo, and I could make these paper mache animals and set them up, and then I could paint from them as my subjects. So I started this large paper mache Chapo, which then I shipped here, which will hopefully be in my show. But that inspired, I guess finally what I would say is, I also think all of us most likely are also inspired by other artists and our teachers. So most recently, when I looked at Kyle Staver has these reliefs. I don't know if you're familiar with her work, but when I saw her reliefs, I thought that's a wonderful idea to be able to paint from reliefs to get the sense of form and light. And so I want to make some birds like Chapo out of reliefs. And so I started taking my air dry clay to a bird sanctuary in California where we spend the summer, and creating these reliefs from life and then trying to paint them. So again, I guess it's this combination for me of what's around me and what I'm observing carefully, my inner life that I'm trying to express, artists that I see and am inspired by. And again, most recently would be Kyle Staver's reliefs and Kathy Rutenberg, who's this amazing ceramic artist who does very imaginary sort of women in nature, funny, weird creatures. And so just looking at them and then working from that with these kind of different materials. Yeah.
Okay, that's a great introduction.
Sorry, I feel like I wandered a little bit.
No,
but
that's all right, I'll nail you later. What about you, Owen?
Oh, my goodness. I came to New York. Before that, I love being outdoors, and so I've been doing a lot of landscapes, seascapes, continue it in New York, working outside. But then at the beginning, I worked in McSorley's bar back in the mid-'70s and spent 3 hours after school drawing figures, oil pastels, figures in that space. I love that space because it's a space and you can see the other room too and the other figures. And,
I wasn't allowed to go there as when I was a student at Cooper because women were not allowed in there.
It's funny, I was so focused on drawing, I didn't even
No.
consider drinking beer. I was so focused. And so after spending a few months there, I did a few paintings, large paintings, one 4x8 large painting I still have, but it's put away way back there, and lots and lots and lots of drawings, oil pastels, pencil drawings, and then pursued drawing and painting outside Washington Square, and painted from small paintings from life there, and some from imagination. Philippe Petit doing his unicycle with his top hat occasionally, but that was from memory. And so traveling on to these different themes, I moved to Brooklyn and did a lot of street scenes, traffic scenes of 4th Avenue and 9th Street over there, an apartment there. And this is one of 13 places I moved in New York, and plenty of places moved around. And then more cityscapes. And then I took a trip to Italy, 1980, and maybe from indirectly or indirectly did these Italian architectures with these fantasy scenes of viaducts and made up, partly a little bit introducing Alice in Wonderland in it and integrating with that and just semi-surreal shapes of figures in Italian landscape architecture. And then off from that, my girlfriend went to Florida, so I was introduced with the tropical Florida fauna. More recently, what I'm doing now is water and animals, snakes and alligators and insects and all these wildlife. I'm fascinated by the internal world of animals because I love animals, but I paint the things I'm terrified of. I'm terrified of snakes. I'm terrified of alligators, and sometimes I dream of swimming among the crocodiles, and sometimes I'm not afraid. It's like, oh my god, and then I'm totally scared. And then I love the shapes of the crocodiles, just the very, and my shapes is add on to my visual vocabulary. So and then I like working small and then working large, and I love working on paper. I'm addicted to paper and panel. I like the smoothness of it, the clarity and the smoothness of it. Paper is less precious, so it's the psychologicalness of paper, and then sometimes canvas, and so I approach it that way. And then so what you see over there, my work is somewhat tropical. Some of the work I do is I've been doing nocturnal landscapes. I was thinking about doing and did one of the Amazon forest fires, and I really like to do a big blazing sea of orange of burning Amazon, almost like pulsating work of the environment, because I'm interested in the environment a lot. And so I've been doing some small ones of those. So that's where my work is now, and what I've been tackling. Some days are better than others, and I put up a lot of stuff to be an artist, I guess, and so that's where I am.
Thank you.
Sure.
Janet?
Okay, well, when I started painting seriously in high school, I think abstract expressionism was the thing that everybody was taught. By the time I went to college, we kind of all learned, and you saw in magazines. I grew up outside of Washington and had access to the National Gallery, but also the Phillips, which was excellent with showing what was going on, what was contemporary. So I always took an interest, and I couldn't wait to move to New York and study art, which I did, 20. And I right away got involved with people at Pratt who were dissatisfied and were starting a new school, which turned into the New York Studio School. It was a focus on, you worked from life, but it was in an abstract kind of frame of mind. I had Mercedes Matter, it was very influential, and we thought of the canvas in an abstract way. And through whatever changes or perceived changes I may have gone through, I never lost that. And I always still think, the canvas, the black, the edges, and the classic ideas about composition, the rhythm, the way things relate to each other. So whatever other things have been different, that has always been the same. At some point, but I never had, except for experimenting when I was 17, I think I never really did abstract paintings without starting from a subject. And at the studio school, we always started from a subject, even though you might not know that to look at them. At some point, I felt like I had gone as far as I could with it. I almost felt like I had backed myself into a corner, and there was a lot of other things you could do with the canvas that I had never really tried to do. That might be interesting to explore. So I started working more figuratively. I drew more directly from things, and painted more figuratively, I guess, and with a real, well, not really real, but sort of real space, my idea of a real space. I never got over wanting things to flatten out. I didn't want it to look like it really looked. I didn't want it to be copying what I saw at all. But I wanted to use the figures, use the whatever I was looking at to pursue whatever ideas I had. And if I felt like I pushed something as far as I could, I would get another idea. You ask about if things externally might have influenced. And I tried to think about that. I thought maybe things like, the feminist movement politically, I wanted to make a statement about that, and I used the figures and to try to tell stories more. Later, I didn't want to tell stories as much as ideas about the work itself, the canvas itself. And when we moved to, got a house and started spending summers on Long Island and started sailing, I would go out on the water, and the space was completely different. It was more like, I think of Chinese space, where you move through the landscape, and it seemed perfect for the flatness of the landscape. And an object would be here, it'd be there, and every time you look at something, it was in a different place. So I really enjoyed working with that imagery on a sort of abstract space, but with recognizable things, boats, food. Then, with the works here, I kept pushing it to where I wanted the time to be flexible and fluid, as well as the space. So things, when I started looking at trees, drawing trees, I thought, you're just looking at the tree, you see tree here, you see the tree there, you see the light, you see the shadow, you see it back here and up here, and I wanted to get that into the picture. So I started working more like this picture up here, which you can't see from the video, but I did a lot in that way. Eventually, I felt like losing the subject altogether. As you can see in these two pictures. And I found it was more, that was really interesting, not I got more interested in the picture itself, not so much the subject. And I felt like any subject really made you look at the picture in terms of the subject. And I didn't want that. I wanted to be free to that and lose the subject and think of the picture in terms of just the picture itself. So at that point, I stopped pretty much using any recognizable figurative imagery and just concentrated on the picture being the image. Of course, you could think a half moon is a half moon shape is a half circle or a half moon, so I guess that's kind of an image or a figure. But that's what I've been doing these are 20 years apart, so I've been doing that for maybe going that way for the last 20 years. Okay.
And Richard, not to be last.
Actually, I started late in life to be an artist. It was in college where I took a course in modern art, and all these slides were so beautiful. I mean, starting with Manet and Impressionists and going forward, and I decided I wanted to, try. And in summers, I went to figurative classes at the Art Students League, and I majored in biology and actually spent a few months in medical school before I decided to become a painter. And I felt very liberated doing that, very liberated. And I had no talent, really. I mean, it was really a jump in the dark. I figured, that would come. I don't know if it has or not, but anyway, you could see that. Well, then I wound up at the studio school. In the beginning, I wasn't a founder, but I was in the first class, and there it was. Like Janet said, it was perceptual, but it was not. It was formal. It was concerned with space, mainly with space and tensions, and that was really fascinating because it was very different from what I had at the Art Students League. So that felt good, but afterwards I felt, well, there was a lot of people going to figurative art, more figurative than the more abstracted kind of figurative painting and drawing that came out of the studio school. So I considered myself, a still life painter. And I worked from observation. But it's something I think this works, it's a personal thing, but I think it works into my art as well. In the late 80s, I got involved with the political situation that was going on there. And I quit painting and eventually ended up in a graduate program at the New School that focused on Marxist economics. And I'd say, started in 72, I didn't get my PhD until 86. So those 14 years were pretty much out of the picture for me, painting. I mean, you must have done maybe a painting a year, over the summer. And I was still a still life painter when I ended. Then I met some friends. I don't know if you know them, but they were, one of them in particular, Ronnie Denota, who was a street painter. And they painted from nature in the city streets. But Ronnie was sort of an impressionist, so we used to go to Central Park. And that's when I first got involved with painting landscape. Today, the only time I paint landscape is when I go to Italy. We've been good, except for the COVID, since 2014, we've gone every year to the same place. It's called Blue Marino, on the outskirts of Florence. Actually, it's in Florence, but it's on the outskirts, which is for us affordable and actually more affordable than spending 2 months any place in the States or in Canada, truthfully. So that's where I do landscape. I don't consider myself a landscape painter. I'm not crazy about it, to tell you the truth. Anyway, once I got back to painting in the late 80s, I was doing mainly still life and some landscape at Central Park. The still lifes changed from being purely perceptual, purely observational, to more, well, let me describe the process. I never was satisfied with how I set up a still life. So I'd start with a still life. I'd start moving things around, taking things out, putting things in. And eventually I said, well, why do I do that? I'll start off with something, and then I'll look around the studio to decide what to put in and what to take out. I mean, so that the composition evolved in my head rather than perceptually. So that was a big change. Eventually, in the 90s, I decided I would like to do big figure paintings. They call them figure fantasies. And what I would do is, because I used to go figure drawing a lot in the 80s and 90s, and I did some landscapes. So what I would do is put, my figure drawings around, think about some of the landscapes I did, and combine them. So that that's why I call them fantasies. Now this is where a change really happened. Once I started doing that, some responses, not from painters, but from ordinary people, they tried to interpret it as a narrative. So at that point, I started thinking, well, maybe I should take that. The whole idea was that what was the same in all my paintings was concerned with color and form. I wanted the structure to be there, and the form. Now, recently, I've come more to think, it's like I thought of the paintings only as formal, arrangements of figures. It was sort of funny, this also goes into the narrative part. When I was teaching, like art appreciation or art history, I would deal with things like, Delacroix's, was the death of somebody under this big bed, what is it called? Death of...
Starts with an S.
Yeah, Sardanapalo.
There's a lot of red in it.
Yeah, there's a lot of red, a lot of action going on. And I would be talking about the formal properties of it. And my students would look at me, well, what's going on in there? So I thought that, well, maybe I should, that was okay with me in the sense that I did something that didn't have any overt story or meaning, that was okay with me. But then I said, well, why don't I give it a little bit of meaning? Why don't I try to direct the narrative? And people will interpret it the way they want, but, I'll give them a hint maybe, or they can take off from that. So lately, what I've been doing, it's going to be in my next show coming up in September, and this is a little bit like Owen here, I'm doing a whole series on the environment, the consequences of global warming. You know, so, you know, be floods, fires.
Why are we laughing at that?
Right, we laugh. Actually, to be truthful, some of them are funny. They're not all gruesome. Anyway, to go back to that, I'll end it up here. As you can see, my life has been I've been indecisive, going here, there, and everything. And it's a little bit like that in my art. I mean, I always think of myself as sort of an expressionist, but there's different kinds. You know, there's like, for me, Morandi's an expressionist. You know, it's still quiet, still lives. I love figure paintings of too, but of somebody totally opposite, like Piero della Francesca, which, you know, there's a stillness and there's a sort of spirituality in that stillness, and the same with Morandi. And at the same time, I like those things like Delacroix, you know. So I'm undecided. I mean, some of my paintings look, you know, stiff and, well, you know, trying to be more that spiritual thing, and others more dynamic. So I don't know if it's a curse or a virtue.
Well, that actually brings me, I don't have a ton of questions because we don't want to be here all night, but it does bring me to something that I feel very strongly about when you look at a life's work, these, you know, huge retrospectives where you see the work of somebody as you're very young and then they evolve. It's like, I very much feel that we all have a signature. We all have a sensibility.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I'm curious, you know, there is this thread that started right when you were very young, actually, but then maybe the first iterations of your working with your hands and eyes and paper and crayons or whatever it was. Do you see that in your own work? Or do you know, because you talk about, you know, having a number of careers in a way, yet you took all those years away from your work. When you started to get up again, was there that inner thread that always can be identified? You know, there is this one thing that is said often, you know, artists really only paint one painting. Or, you know, a writer only tells one story. That we have our own line of fire in a way in the world. So I'm wondering where each of you think you have that, where we could identify it, or maybe you don't. I don't know. I mean, I tend to believe that people do, but I could be wrong.
I absolutely think you're right. And I don't know if others have felt this way, but often I struggle with not necessarily liking. I remember he's a young artist when I went to Chautauqua, and I remember standing and doing a landscape. And there were other artists, where you're that age when realism looks like that's the talented people. And I didn't have that. I would make things. I remember standing in front of a landscape with a log and painting it, and it looked like a leg standing up. And I remember crying. And Stanley Lewis was my teacher, and he came and I said, it looks like it's a leg, it's not a log, you know? And he was like, isn't it wonderful? It's plastic space, it's popping up, you know, and his enthusiasm. And I think, luckily, I think as we develop, we learn to appreciate who we are, and it might not always be that signature that you're talking about. It might not always be who we had kind of maybe would want if we could fantasize what that signature would be. But I think there is a sensibility, and I know that even throughout the way I paint, that there's certain ways I paint that are consistent in a look to the way I've applied paint, even though there's slight shifts. Mm-hmm. So I think that's an interesting idea, and I don't know if other people feel that as well.
Yeah, I don't. Did you?
Yeah, I think there's a thread of, it's almost like my basic thing, my base is landscape, clouds. I mean, I never get sick of clouds after 70 plus years. I always get amazed how clouds, how luminous they are. They're incredible. And I like to put down clouds, and it's almost, sometimes it's like a backdrop and then landscape. And I guess it's a certain touch keeps me going. And I know when I do a painting, even now, it's almost like this fire in the belly of, can I do it? Can this work? You know, day after day, am I gonna screw it up or not? Or, you know, can I actually do it? And if I do it halfway, it's like, look what I did, you know, it's like all the other stuff. It's all the other stuff. I have a hard time with technology and business and filling out forms. I can go here away from all that stuff, and make my own mistakes and be my own director. And if I screw up, you know, no one's going to yell at me. Wow, that's great, you know. And I love being outside a lot and painting outside. And I did some last summer.
But is there evidence of this thread visually? Because I mean, that's what outsiders feel.
Well, I think so. I think through landscapes and landscapes and interiors too, like McSorley's, or microcosm of the insects of an inner world, and then going way back like a panoramic movie set, a panoramic of a landscape and clouds and under a full moon and vast. So I'm dealing with different ranges and people, and even self-portraits, you know, and I've done an observation, because it's just visual vocabulary that is, you can't have it too much of it sometimes, I feel. So that's what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
And drawing a lot.
Janet?
I think it's a thing that's easier in a way to see in other people's work, you know? I mean, you can always kind of recognize somebody's work in oneself. I think, yeah, sometimes you're made more aware of it than others. I know when I was in graduate school and I took Leland Bell's class, and we did not get along. We did not have the same vision. And he liked everyone to work from his vision. He had very muted colors, and things were, I don't know, kind of in a conservative way in my way of looking. And so he kind of tended to favor people whose work was more like his idea. So I tried very hard to do that. And the hardest one I tried, I thought, you know, he's gonna like this one. And he came over, because he kept saying, you know, you're doing this thing. So I tried really hard to do what I thought he wanted. He came over and he said, you're doing your own thing again. That's it, you know, I can't do it any other way. I just do it my way, that's all. So now I kind of realize, you know, I don't like soft colors. I don't want, you know, I kind of was able to say, this is what I want, and that's what I'll do, because I couldn't do it any other way anyway. So.
An artist should do what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, you must feel this thread from way back when you were, you know, just kind of beginning, and then that gap.
Yeah.
Where you immediately picked up where you left off, really.
Yeah, I did, yeah, pretty much. I don't feel like I have a signature. I don't know, maybe a few signatures. But yeah, there is a thread. I've always been interested in color and form and space. And I've always been mainly concerned with expressing emotion, mood through those. Even in the works I'm doing now, I have to struggle, you know, to keep that to keep it from being illustrational. You know, I'm struggling, I have to struggle with that. Although it's not as hard as it seems because I'm taking a lot of stuff from photographs, sketches, and combining them. So there's an imaginative thing there. And I hope that comes through. I mean, this is what I feel, you know, this is what I want to do. I want to express mood, emotion through formal means. The other things, the narrative, are add-ons, you know, to make me feel like I'm relevant. I don't know. I mean, I don't think, you know, doing something on the environment is going to change the world. I mean, it's not going to do that, you know, it's going to, I don't know who's going to speak to. Maybe nobody. We'll see when my show comes up. But yeah, I mean, I have been always concerned with those formal things. And then that tension between, and this is where I don't know if it's a virtue or a curse, you know, between going, you know, toward that sort of spiritualized stillness, which maybe I get in a few of my still lives, and the more dynamic stuff, I don't know if I get it, maybe I get it in some of my figure paintings, I'm not sure. But at least that's what I'm trying.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a thread definitely in everything.
Well, I mean, it is, I mean, I didn't know everybody's history when I thought about these four people. I knew their work. But it does seem that your training and your history is similar in some way. You all share some part of that, you see. And so I'm, you know, I think that does foretell the kind of movement, say, from straightforward representation to the meshing of imaginative painting or, you know, invention that seems that everybody is incorporating in their work, feeling absolutely, you know, comfortable with the notion of, you know, letting something go and letting something in and so on. From what I can observe, I think one of the things that holds the work together is the inherent structure in the work. Every single person here is building a picture, you know, out of all these disparate ideas. And I think that's kind of, you know, that's part of the formal thing, but within that structure, there's the freedom to express whatever it is that you're passionate about. And everybody here seems passionate about something, if not more than one thing, which is kind of amazing. So the real kicker is, as you've evolved and matured as artists and also humans, you know, the struggle from the beginning where you're just trying to sort of become, and then you get tossed, you know, things come up in life, things are good or bad or, you know, change, and they seem to affect us even if we don't express them in our work. Have you, each person, have you moved towards work where you are closer to an integrity of your own internal workings? Have you gotten closer and feel more in tune with who you are? Have you become whole, even within the struggle? Because Owen keeps talking about the struggle, which seems never to go away. You know, I mean, we hear about, you know, our senior artists, and they're always talking about, everybody talks about the struggle. So that, let's assume that's there. But do you get closer and closer to the place where you really are at one with the work and your your internal workings? I know it's a tough question, but I've been thinking about that as time goes by and looking at, particularly those huge shows we see. Sometimes I go to all these blockbusters, in part not because I'm so interested in seeing a blockbuster, but to see the trajectory of somebody, that we're all living through right now. So, I mean, does that mean anything to you, this notion?
Can
Yes,
I-
please.
Actually, what you said brought up a memory. When I was, after the studio school, when I was painting on my own, I was very influenced by Morandi. And, I personally, I'm shy and a bit withdrawn. So, an introvert. So when I was doing the Mirandis, I felt, wow, this is expressing my personality because it's, still, and I'm looking for calm, I'm looking for, some spiritual thing, which I always felt that I'm not religious, except in the Buddhist sense, that I was expressing my personality. But that changed. I mean, I think that I'm not saying I'm a multiple whatever they call it, multiple personality, but, we're all a bunch of different things, I think. So integrity is a hard thing to talk about. It really is.
That's why I brought it up.
I guess I should leave it at that. I mean, maybe I feel, well, I'll leave it at that. It's a question in my mind.
Well, I think it's a personal thing to yourself. I mean, I painted things, I did a series of my marine paintings, that you may or may not know, and city paintings. I felt I was doing something that I had really found myself, and I would always paint in this way. And then at a certain point, I feel like who knows why, reached the end of what I could explore, painting like that. And even if I wanted to and tried to, I couldn't do it. It wasn't interesting. It didn't seem as authentic as it had. And I had to look for something more, something beyond that. So to me, that was like a personal kind of integrity that I felt like if I kept doing this, which, I could try to, it wouldn't be what I thought would be the thing I should do. So, I don't know.
Have you come across that question in your travels?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I was thinking, I guess just a lot of thoughts went through when he was talking about Buddhism, and I do believe we were talking about a signature, and I'm also aware that we are constantly changing, and that we're never quite the same. I think for me, I had such powerful teachers. I also had Mercedes Matter, Graham Nixon, Stanley Lewis, Charles Cajori. I had very strong voices that taught me so much. William Bailey, and Catherine Murphy, and then a few I don't think of so fondly, but I think there is a little bit of a struggle for me, judging, self-doubt, and then trying to take the information you learn and then letting it go, and self-acceptance, and because I think I like things that are kind of silly, that I can hear some of these teachers and maybe thinking, why are you doing bird reliefs? Let's go back to the flatness. Let's talk about classic. So I think there's that struggle, but because I think I also have been changing through my life, I think I've always been pretty connected to myself, but within a multitude of sort of self-doubt and questioning. That's a very complicated,
Yes,
question.
Yes.
well, I also bring it up a little bit in terms of the world that we're surrounded in, where the questions of integrity are, in the air, because, I mean, when we all started working, the art world was considerably smaller, and there was a lot less going on. So, even if we're not reading magazines or going to a million shows, we are still affected by things. So, which is one of the reasons I thought of it,
Yeah.
I know for me, after the studio school, there was a sense of trying too hard or being very serious and just trying very hard and, hear the echoes of the teachers, painting this way. And it took me a while to really, I was back in the 70s and it's almost like into the middle 90s and just going to Florida and just, there's a sense of, I don't know, indirectly not trying so hard and just having fun or just having joy of whether it's in a serious way, I suppose. I wanted to be loose but precise the way I approach the painting. Approach a large painting like a small painting, very casually but precise, casually but seriously. Confliction, which is natural to have that tension and make it work on both sides. To do a large painting and stop it and work on another one and just not be so. I'm very serious, but just not get caught up with it and try to be casual in the way I approach it. And sometimes having fun, or it's almost arranging toys, think about toys a little bit, and rearranging it in my mind. And, from paintings, from photographs, I surround myself, and I have paper all over the floor, and as abstractions, I have all these papers, and I paint from the papers, almost from observation. Put one side as land, and then water, as paper, almost looking like an abstraction, and then have an animal on top of it, and working it that way. So that's been, just came on without trying too hard or.
I mean, in a way, we're trying to trick ourselves into.
In an honest way.
Trick ourselves.
There's so much contradictions, it's okay.
That's all right. Trick yourself in an honest way. That's,
Yeah,
I'm going
I
to remember
suppose.
that. That's very cool, Well, I think that's a wonderful way to summarize our discussion. It's been a great pleasure. I think the show is marvelous. I hope people do get to see it. Are there any questions in the audience? Well, why don't we start here, because you made the trip. Yes.
I have one question. I know my experience looking back, trying to pick works for the show, as I went through some, I would say, why didn't I do more of those? Did that occur to you as you went back, or did you say, oh, that was an old thing, now I'm doing this? So there were some times when you have a thread that goes and then you feel you change your thread, and something you're doing now connects in a way that you hadn't imagined to an earlier work. I'm just wondering if you found, when you were trying to pick for the show, when you looked at that old work, were there some that you thought, oh, gee, I should have done more of those, or I should have followed that more, I might have gotten here quicker. That I detoured in between, and now I'm here. Okay? No?
I know, I look back and I thought, oh, hey, that wasn't so bad. And then I thought, oh, that got too tight. Why am I shoving so much into my paint? Look at this, was a little looser and freer. So I had that a little bit.
I think it's healthy to look back that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah, it is a sense of, oh, that doesn't so bad. I thought it was going to be, wow,
Right.
I'm not going to throw it out after all.
Right.
I did that. I found it had been rolled up for who knows how many years. And I
You
forgot
just
I
never,
had it.
you never
And
know.
I thought it was a diptych, and it turned out not to be, and I thought, well, I'm gonna paint the other, I started trying to paint the other half.
Yeah.
To when it was found, and so I thought, well, you know, it got me back to doing something that I hadn't done in a long time that became interesting, so it's true, yeah, it's good to look back, surprising.
It's a good question because I had to go through a lot of stuff because I had to move.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
you know, couldn't haul my life with me. And it was tough, you know, trying to discern what felt like you at that time because
Yeah.
as we've all discovered, we've changed. And what held up over a long period of time, even though it was so distant, you know, that's an interesting problem. Yeah.
Barbara, how do you feel about your long haul? Since
Well, this isn't about me.
I know, but when you were thinking deeply about these questions to ask us.
You know, I feel like I keep doing the same thing, and I keep trying to relive the moments where I have that tension between not even knowing what I'm doing and being very, very cognizant of what's happening. It's kind of, you know, the freedom of knowing what you know already after many years and being able to display that with confidence. And confidence, I think, is the toughest thing to achieve. And, you know, that I am very grateful that I've had this opportunity to paint my whole life. You know, it's made a way to do it. It's pretty hard, but it's in the long haul worth it. Yeah, I think. Wendy?
In the context of looking back at one's work earlier, how far does accidents take you? Let's say you're planning a painting and something else happens on the road of painting that painting. Do you pick up that accident? Does it remain in your work once you evolve a little bit outside of the framework of what you usually do? Because, I mean, accident became very important in certain periods in the 20th century, and other times it was revised. But just the concept of accident, and does it lead you elsewhere?
Can I answer? I think every one of my paintings is an accident.
You like crash or?
Yeah, I mean, I can't, I don't, I start off with a vague idea and it totally changes. You know, it could be daylight painting and then up at nighttime painting. You know, I mean, it's just accidents come along. I like that, so I go along with that. So yeah, that's why I'm saying every one of my paintings is an accident.
But to me, that's the difference often between a painter and an amateur. An amateur says, I'm going to paint that, it's nouns. And they're satisfied because what they wanted to do is what's there. Whereas most artists, some more than others, set up a situation where I'm not sure where this is going, but I'm going to pay attention to what's happening. And I'm going to build on what's happening, not what I planned on. And I think that's, to me, what works in a painting. You can tell that the artist was paying attention to what actually started happening in the painting and not what he planned.
I like it because it's open-ended and there's a healthy fluidity to it.
Well, some people,
very fluid.
some
I mean,
people
it's
set up
versatile,
more,
too.
yeah, some people set up more of a
Yeah,
on purpose
yeah.
create accidents, like people who start just with switch of stuff and then
Right.
try to pull out of it. But
Well, there is something that I've discovered. I find the accident and then try to control it. And that's death. One should go with that because that came out of the flow of working. And you should not be correcting or changing it. You should really understand it, which is what you're saying. Yes, Cliff.
I have a question for Richard. You said something about not wanting your painting to be too illustrative at one point. I just wondered if you could elaborate on that. I was curious about what you meant.
Well, it's one of the reasons I don't like painting from observation. Because when I do, most of my paintings start from some observation. And it always has to be corrected because it looks like I'm just copying, rather than constructing, or inventing. So, yeah, it usually starts off what might look like an illustration. And then, even if I have an abstract idea in mind, sometimes it works out right away, I could get the abstraction. And I know some people, I'm always amazed by this is a problem of age, can't remember anybody's name. One of your favorite artists, not Fairfield Porter, but she's living, 90-something years old. You must know.
Lois Starr.
Lois Starr, yes. I can't believe her. I mean, I was once speaking to her in an opening, and it came up that all her paintings are done all at one day, sometimes 2 in a day. They're so abstract and so realistic at the same time. I don't understand how she could do it. I almost stopped painting at that point. I said, I'm not a painter. What am I doing? It actually affected me that way. It really, I don't know. Some people can do it.
And Cliff, I think what Ann said before is what we, those of us who went to the studio school particularly kind of have been taught the idea that illustration is more having your idea and illustrating it, getting it complete, right, Ann? Would you say that's true? And that what she's talking about is that journey of discovery as you're working and saying, oh, wow, look at how that color is reacting against that. That's a surprise. I'm going to maybe build on that. So you're, as I've gotten older, I appreciate illustration more. And then I'm not really sure anymore exactly what the line is. I feel like in some ways there's a snobbery we've taken to the idea of illustration. But I think that's sort of traditionally how I was taught to think of it.
A lot of you have mentioned your mentors and teachers, and there are these voices that are in our head, especially when we're fresh out of school. Do you feel like you've absorbed those voices and they've become your own voice, or the methods that you learned, or do you still hear those echoes from student days?
I think I listen to what's important for me, and then the other stuff like Nicaroni, this part, pushing your working flat to some degree. Don't be so literal. But some other stuff, I don't have to hear that, I guess. It's very personal. You pick and choose sometimes. Maybe every day is different too, how you approach it too. But I hear his voice.
I feel like you're discovering new people too, new stuff. Now, why did I like this back then,
Right, yeah, that does happen.
Well, I know that as a teacher, I would tell grad students, spend a year in the studio and, kick out all your teachers. Just kick them out. Because what really matters, which Owen just expressed, is what will stay. And the rest is gravy, you don't need it. But it's there. Even the negative comments, right? Everybody can remember at least one negative print, right? Oh, I remember when, and how affected you were by it.
It's with you.
Gotta be really careful about doing that. Are there any online questions that we should be attending?
Well, I just picked this up, but Suzanne Lake had said early in the discussion that she wished she could see people's work as they were talking about their work. I don't know if there's a way now, after the fact, to focus on pieces.
Don't people have websites?
That's right.
Yes.
They do, but it might be nice to, well, it's up to you.
I'm happy to carry the laptop. Start with Richard in the corner there and then go around.
I think to be proper on the discussion, or maybe meanwhile, we can continue.
This is a later Richard Castellana still life. And this is from 1967.
Would there any have questions that we could?
I'm just thinking about the thread you were talking about, and to me, each person here seems to tolerate different levels of chaos. And that almost identifies the work.
It's funny, I like.
Owen Gray from 1995.
A lot of talk and all that, but visually, I like to take things, complicated things, and put them in order and direct the things.
And from 2019.
Confusion sometimes. I like simplicity, but I like confusion in my own terms.
Because your work is always so dense.
Yeah.
And other people's is always over.
You know, Walton Ford has a great expression where he identifies himself as a maximalist.
It's like drawing, it's like this and then the open space.
Jenny's earlier painting.
Kids, is the sound carrying as you're?
Elizabeth, is the sound coming in? Is the sound coming in?
You're about to come back to me.
Yeah.
You're about to be back here. Yeah, that's where I could do that before.
Well, I think this has been very interesting. The questions from the audience have been terrific. And it's been a great pleasure to see the show and everybody else. Thank you very much for joining me. Oh, well, Marcia she's very good at strong arm. Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome. This is fun.
Yes.
End stream. Bye-bye.
What?